Welcome to the Sports Lounge, 231. Charlie Hildebrand is here. Travis Krins is here as well. Nathan Stacken waiting in the wings. You got the baseball playoffs coming up in a couple of days, and you got some college football. Since Mr. Hildebrand is here, let's start with that college football. Not a whole lot there on Saturday. You did have Washington State over USC on Friday. Were you? I was disappointed. I didn't really expect much anyway, but a pretty ho-hum week. Not a whole lot there. Anything excites you?
Yeah, not too much. Like you mentioned, the most interesting thing was on Friday when Washington State beat USC. It turns out, like we mentioned before the show, you brought up that the most successful Trojan team of the weekend was probably the one from Troy that beat LSU. But yeah, not too much else. I found myself fascinated though watching Georgia Tennessee, like it was just a car wreck or a train wreck you couldn't look away from. And I don't know, maybe that says something about me. Maybe I need to get priorities in my life in order and not watch games like that. But
there wasn't much else on at the moment. I did like there were 164 passing yards total in that game. Not a whole lot as far as passing is concerned. Butch Jones, much hated in my household for many years, still has a job for some reason. I don't know if they thought they'd be better, but no, this has been a couple years in what he's been there for 5 years. You want to give him 3 or 4, that's fine, but they're getting worse now. They're getting worse, and how much longer can he hold on? They got a bye week this week. They have Alabama in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Does he make it through the year? Because I don't see any way he's back next year.
I think it's unlikely he makes it through the year. If you just look at his actual record the last 2 or 3 years, it's not bad. It's more like the way they're losing, getting blown out,
or the way they've won.
The way they've won against bad teams, and that last year was their year. They beat both Florida and Georgia, and still could not win the East. And
can't have that.
I don't know when. I think he's going to get fired before the year's over. Not only do I think he's going to get fired, I don't even think he's going to coach all 12 games. But we'll see.
Marcus, are there similarities between? Would you put Tennessee and Nebraska? Any other schools you would put in that same spot? Maybe LSU's trending that direction at the moment, as we support the Hanson Classic once again here.
If you want to go back far enough, you could probably say Pitt isn't what it was. Those are the three probably that's LSU. I mean, they're in Louisiana. I think under the right coach, and I mean, it hasn't been going great, but I think Orgeron can figure it out. They just need some sort of offensive identity. They don't have that. The quarterbacks they do put out there are getting hurt. They can't run it, which, I mean, you're LSU, you have to be able to run the ball. So I think LSU can turn things around. But Tennessee, I think, has a lot of problems similar to Nebraska in that they're in a conference where they're in the easier of the two divisions. At least that's how it's perceived. And, they're probably hanging on to some previous successes. And they've tried a lot of different things. I feel fairly confident that Nebraska's, Nebraska at least, I think we know what their identity can be, and them having success. I think it's running the football, playing defense. He's kind of in this area where, they can't figure out if they want to be a spread team, power run team, whatever. And they probably want to be as far as recruiting goes because they're closer to the South, where there's, probably more players. So I think Nebraska is probably more likely to figure this out more quickly, even though, they both could be making coaching changes at the end of the year.
It seems like the older I get, a lot of jobs are easier to win at than others, but so often it just comes down to you need the right guys as the head coach. And when you have the right guys as the head coach, everything just becomes easier. And that there's a lot of times where you can just look and it's just there's something that's just not working out or not fitting right. And it's just really hard when you're not just on the field, but off the field, not clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is, and I don't believe this. Like a lot of people with Nebraska have been sort of ripping them for going to the 3-4, and that sort of thing. I think it's important if you're going to coach a team and have success, like you have to stick with whatever your identity is going to be from the start. So what ends up happening is you get to the third year. This is Riley's third year, right?
Yeah, it's his third year.
So, whatever you want to say about the first 2 years, then you change the defense. I think that maybe gives a perception that you had things wrong, regardless of whether or not they really were wrong defensively. And now when you can't stop anybody, like they had earlier in the season, I think that just gives fuel to people saying, well, he doesn't know what he's doing. And that's why, Riley may not feel particularly strongly either way about the 4-3, 3-4, whatever. But when you make the change and you have problems and you're making a change sort of in the middle of your tenure, I think that maybe gives fans a chance, something to jab at and pick apart.
Talk me up, Charlie. Charlie Hildebrand's still here.
Say that again.
All right, you're still here.
Yep.
Chip Kelly to Tennessee. What do you think?
If it happened, it would be interesting, and I'd like to see it. If anything, I just want to see Chip Kelly coaching somewhere. I don't know if that would be like the number one job where he could be
SEC.
the most successful, but I think he could be really good at Tennessee if he decided that that's where he wanted to go. Although I think he could also be really successful at UCLA or Texas A&M or a lot of other jobs because he's just good at coaching.
I would say UCLA and Tennessee, of the jobs we think are going to be open, are probably the two spots where he makes the most sense. Unfortunately, I don't think he makes a lot of sense at Nebraska. It would be fun, but I don't think it makes as much sense there.
Yeah, I'd like it if he went there. I feel confident in saying that Chip Kelly will not coach in Lincoln. If he does, it's as the visiting team.
Since we've mentioned Georgia, they were ranked 7th going into the game. They're ranked 5th right now. I have a hard time believing that's the 5th best team, Marcus. Talk a lot about the polls. That's not the 5th best team in the country. I got to say that's not where I would put them. Would you put them at 5th?
I mean, I think they're a top 10 team, and I would say that we're at the point of the season where I'm not willing to make any large distinctions on top, teams that are in the top 5, necessarily staying there. So it doesn't really bother me that they're the 5th ranked team. I don't really care right now. So their resume is reasonable enough, I think, so far. I think that might be part of why they're ranked there.
I don't know if people think like Notre Dame, like that's a good win for them. They won on a last-second field goal by our Asian gentleman with the backup quarterback. Their quarterback, Jake Fromm, doesn't seem to make a difference at all. He's just a guy. Yes, he had he had one running touchdown. He had 84 yards. He had 7 completions and 84 yards. So I mean, if they could get a goddamn quarterback in there, holy shit, they might be actually really good. But I have no faith that they'll beat Florida. No.
We're talking about teams in the SEC. Of course, he's a quarterback. That doesn't matter. So
yeah, I was going to say, I think that describes like 11 teams in the SEC of like, well, yeah, they got some talented guys, but they don't have anybody that's real good at quarterback right now.
It's not fun to watch. We don't like watching that dog shit right there.
I'll say this: Georgia's defense looks pretty good. I think you got to like the Georgia defense. Everything else, we'll see.
Who's your number 1 team, Charlie? Alabama's number 1. I would put Clemson at number 1 right now.
I would also put Clemson at number 1. I think they've got better wins. I think Alabama beating Florida State, even though Florida State's not looked great, is still a good win because Florida State's changed without their quarterback. But I think Clemson's wins are still better. I mean, beating the snot out of both Louisville and Virginia Tech. Beating an Auburn team that, when they play anybody else, has looked really, really, really good, at least the last couple of weeks, I would say. I mean, like Marcus said, I don't think it really matters at this point in the year, but just from what we've seen so far, I think Clemson has a better resume than Alabama.
I think one thing that's interesting to think about, or at least should be considered, is when you're talking about specifically Auburn and Florida State, because we think those are probably the two best opponents those two teams have faced, right?
I think Virginia Tech is better than Florida. Well,
okay, so those three. I think those are teams that are going to have 8 or 9 wins at the end of the year, and the fact that we're talking about, resumes, they're going to have good resumes. I think, those are the games. Alabama playing Florida State, obviously that's a good non-conference game. Same with Clemson playing Auburn. I hope that's a model for these other teams that want to play in the playoff. And I think, at the end of the year, we'll probably have 4 teams that challenge themselves in the non-conference. But, though that should be the model as far as, schedule a couple non-conference games that will challenge you, and that should be a route to the playoffs. So, obviously they've won those games. They're good teams anyway, but it's good that they had the non-conference tests early in the season to let us know that they're really good. And obviously it seems like we're just kind of on a collision course for those two teams meeting again, and I'd be perfectly fine with that. I was going to make the remark on Saturday, and I didn't. But I'm not interested in watching Alabama unless they're going to get tested by a team like Clemson. And I'm reaching the same point with Clemson. I'm not interested in watching them unless they're going to get tested. And, the teams they've played so far just can't do it because those two teams are really good.
Clemson doesn't seem to have the same modus operandi that Alabama has, where they're like just a robotic machine. But Clemson reminds me a lot of like the Pete Carroll USC teams and the Miami teams of the early 2000s, where it's just like they're just more talented than everybody else. Sometimes they may not bring their A game when they're playing, a mediocre conference team. But like when the lights shine bright, they're gonna show up and play, and it's probably not going to be fun for the other team because they're just more talented than everybody except maybe Alabama.
I feel like we still got it with Clemson. We're like, they're going to have a game yet this year or two where it's going to be close in the fourth quarter. I'm not sure Alabama's going to have that. Like you said, they're almost robotic, just very robotic and robust domination. I just didn't have it. They were 4 touchdown favorites over Ole Miss. Prior to that game, I had no interest in watching it, and I didn't watch the second. And obviously, it was a 63-point win or whatever it was. So, good for Alabama, just keeping the train rolling.
Charlie, do you agree with Marcus's point on the non-conference schedule? And if you do, will you hold that against Washington, who yet again had a porous non-conference schedule?
I do agree with it. One extra thing that I think's fun is that since Clemson played Auburn, Alabama plays Auburn later this year, and Alabama played Florida State, and Clemson will play Florida State later this year, and we can kind of compare those. But yeah, I think that if all things are considered equal, or if two teams basically look the same, you should take the one who's tested themselves more out of conference. So I would hold that against Washington to an extent. Now certainly, if Washington's 13-0, nobody's going to keep them out of the playoff then.
But they have one loss.
But yeah, like you said, if they've got one loss and every other conference has a champion with one loss, it seems like there's a good chance they could get left out by saying, we played Rutgers in the non-conference instead of playing Ohio State or Penn State or Michigan or whoever else.
Didn't see the USC-Washington State game. How was the finish of this one?
It was good. I know Washington State scored they kicked a field goal with like a minute and a half left. USC got the ball back. I thought it was going to be a lot like how they drove down the field against Texas to tie the game. And it was actually pretty anticlimactic, where I think it was just like the second or third play, USC turned it over. Like they didn't even drive 30 or 40 yards first to make it interesting. The best thing was after the game, Mike Leach was interviewed by someone on SportsCenter, and they asked him to describe the scene down there, and he said it was like Woodstock, except everybody had their clothes on, and I thought that was fun.
Is Mike Leach your favorite coach?
I don't know if he's my favorite, but he ranks highly. I like him. He makes me laugh.
I mean, he he makes me laugh too. I like his offense, but he is an asshole. I mean, let's not sugarcoat that either. So I would say
why is he an asshole? Why do you make this libelous accusation?
I think it was fairly well documented during his time at Texas Tech that he's not a player's coach, and he, whether or not
get in that shed, get in the shed, and shut up, you stupid bastard.
Whether he locked Craig James' son in the shed or not.
Do you see that as a negative? I see that as a positive.
I think it's a negative. I mean, I don't think it's a positive way to get guys to come play football for you. But hey, if you're recruiting guys to middle piss Washington to play football for you, that's pretty good. So, and yeah, I mean, I love watching his offense. I'll give him that. I mean, as far as a football, genius, he's no Joe Tiller, R.I.P. But he's pretty good.
They should have lost to Boise State. We know this. They should have lost to Boise State, but they did not. So Washington State still undefeated. Don't know how the hell their schedule. 5 of their last 7 on the road. That's not good. And I heard one gentleman bring up last night / today, Charlie, should we put the Pac-12 North in the conversation for best division? Washington State, I guess Stanford, Oregon. I don't know. I guess I could find others better than that, but is that even worth discussing? I
think it merits at least a small conversation. I mean, I think we could probably agree that Oregon State is bad, but I think of the other 5 teams are all at least relatively good. I mean, Cal, if anything, is much better than any of us thought they would be. And then I think we could say that Washington State, Stanford, and Oregon are probably all going to be good. Now, I mean, I guess Oregon could still go like 7-5 or 8-4, which isn't great. But I think even though Stanford's already got 2 losses, so it'd be tough to get to 10. But I could see Stanford, Washington State all winning 10 games this year.
The Big Ten East for me, Marcus, that's where it's at.
You're a big fan of Rutgers and Maryland, or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Penn State, very solid. Michigan, solid. Ohio State, very good. Michigan State sort of bludgeoned Iowa yesterday, so I can hear you out there. So,
and for all the crap given Maryland appears like they might be. I mean, maybe not like 10-win good, but like Maryland might be relatively good this year.
A lot of double-digit favorites, and Minnesota, they lost. Bad loss. I mean, you got to win that game. The situation, late tie game, that would have been a good win for them.
Got to win the game. Minnesota lost that game. Maryland played well enough to win, but Minnesota did not do the things they had to do to win. I mean, this is their whole MO was running the football, and they ran for 3. So that's as simple as it gets to me. Maryland, just sort of bled the game, and that's going to be a big one. I think if you're a Gopher fan at the end of the year, where you're like, well, that's one we probably want back.
Charlie, you're going to play Bowl Bound or not, I understand it, on the stacking program in a bit here.
That's the rumor, at least.
We are a month in, 4 or 5 games in, probably a little too early for this, but let's take a stab at it. Where would you draw the line for national title playoff hopefuls? USC is at 14, Oklahoma State is at 15, Virginia Tech is at 16, Louisville is at 17. I would maybe say somewhere around there, maybe Oklahoma State, everybody 15 and up right now still has a playoff chance.
That's what I was going to say, Oklahoma State and above. Maybe that's a little bit stubborn on my part because I picked Oklahoma State to be in the playoffs before the year. I mean, I think they still control their own destiny just because if they win out, they play in the Big 12 title game against TCU or over somebody else. USC will be tough. Just no bye weeks, and they've not looked as good as we thought they could be, but they could, I think, still do it. And then you start going ranked better than that, and I think it just becomes easier and easier. So, yeah, I think I would. I think 15, unless something really weird happens, seems like a fair cutoff point for now.
Marcus, I've got a team. Got a team here. I think most people thought they'd be good. Stacken may have had this team going to their conference title game, maybe getting to a big-time bowl game.
Wait, is this the every 4 years where Krenz picks Auburn and they go to play in the national title game?
Not Auburn this year. I'm looking at a team, don't know how good they are. I would say their toughest, if they can win next week, I'm looking at Miami. And there's not a whole lot left there. They got Virginia Tech at home, Notre Dame at home. They're at Pitt. Their next two games, if they can get, they're at Florida State next week, and they have looked absolutely terrible. And then they have Tech in 2 weeks. If they at home, I might be bullish on Miami to run the table. 12-0. What say you?
Yeah, because they have not lost yet, and it feels like they might have lost once or twice already.
Well, they were off for like 2 weeks there.
Yeah, and so it just feels like the Florida State game will be tricky for them. Georgia Tech obviously will be a tricky game for them, but I would generally agree with what you had to say. I mean, Notre Dame has been pretty nondescript, and they get them at home. So I feel like Miami, I mean, they're at least, probably going to – they got a great shot at winning that division, right? So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on. I understand where your bullishness is coming from. I'm not gonna steal your thunder if you want to pick them to make a run. So, but Hurricanes are back.
Krenz, on a scale of 1 to Luther Campbell, how much do you like the gold chain they get to wear after forcing a turnover, getting a touchdown on the sideline or whatever it is?
You probably like it more than me. I give it a 6.
Well,
yeah, it's about. I mean, I like it, but I'm about the same. I think there's other.
I like title belts. Title belts are good.
He likes it, but he's not going to the bank and getting a bag of money and passing it out on the sideline. So that's
he's not Rick Pitino in it.
So
there's no envelopes of cash here.
Speaking of Miami, and it reminds me of Tech, and it reminds me of Tennessee. So Tennessee, they've beaten UMass by 3, and they beat Tech lucky as fuck, like in double overtime. Like I don't have the schedule pulled up, but like they should be probably 0-4, at least 1-3, maybe 0-4. So Tennessee's pretty disgusting. Any other team that you have that maybe a hard on for besides my Miami squad now, apparently? Anybody else? Maybe, let's see, want to kick the tires on TCU. They've got...
big game this week. Game day is going there.
Really? Oh.
Yes.
They're at Oklahoma. They're at Oklahoma there, but TCU, see what you got there. So, anything else from the week, Charlie? You had Wisconsin, Northwestern, maybe a little closer than folks thought. Michigan, I like Michigan, but again, they've not played well. They're probably not the 7th best team in the country right now. Anything else from the week that was?
I don't think I have too much else. I know Traxler mentioned this earlier, and I would generally agree that this seems, and I think Krenz mentioned this in the chat, that a lot of this seems like Cavs Warriors, where it's just like, it kind of seems like we're just waiting until Clemson and Alabama are playing again. Like, I think there's other teams that are good, especially when you get to the playoffs, that would have the capability of beating them. But it just seems inevitable that those two teams just look like they're like head, shoulders, knees, and toes above everybody else right now.
They're on a 10-foot ladder above all the other teams.
Yeah. The other good teams are at the top of the turnbuckle in professional wrestling. Those two are on top of the steel cage.
Yeah.
Terrific.
I would like to point out that I think Pac-12 After Dark is starting to take us fans for granted a little bit.
Okay.
Like where I think they have an assumption that we're going to stay up and watch any shitty game until the very end. But and I love my Buffs. You know I love my Buffs, but there was no way I was going to make it to the end of that game last night. I checked out, relatively early by the Pac-12 After Dark standards, and then you had Oregon, basically running away from Cal, middle of the fourth quarter. So that was the end of that for me. It's one thing on Friday night. You got two teams ranked in the top 15, top 20. I can make that happen. And plus I was already drunk. That makes it easy. But, Saturday night when you got two fairly average games going on, I can't necessarily always pull that off. So either they need to work harder to make it an every week thing or they're going to lose me.
Saquon Barkley had a kickoff return. He threw a pass. He didn't do much other than that. He's probably your Heisman favorite at the moment.
They were talking. He is Heisman favorite. I forget the exact odds. I want to say like 7-4. But I heard somebody say, "Oh, that's his Heisman moment." It's like, well, he had 55 yards rushing, and I understand he had a touchdown, he had a kickoff return touchdown, and he threw a pass. But it's like, let's do it against somebody who's not Indiana, and then we can talk. So.
He had some nice plays against the Hoosiers. He's got 4 plays against Iowa, which was a bigger game for them that went on the road. That
Marcus.
were bigger deals.
Marcus, do you have headphones?
I do. I'd have to track them down.
You want to experiment with headphones at some point before?
Are you having some problems or what?
Maybe. Charlie, do you hear anything?
They're not always, but a lot of times there's a lot of feedback.
So we will see how this goes here. Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, probably best game I saw. That was a good little game right there. Next week, Louisville at NC State on a Thursday night. Interested in that one right there. Wake Forest couldn't quite get it done against Florida State. I think we all would have preferred Wake Forest to win that game. Penn State.
Quick on that.
Yes.
Wake Forest has to wear those helmets for forever. Now, those are so much better than the WF logo, like actually doing the demon. Again, I thought that was. They went from like one of the most bland, boring helmets to like, hey, you might have like one of the 15 or 20 best now.
We like it. Marcus, you like the helmets?
They're very good. I agreed with Charlie's
I like that.
tweet, I think it was.
That's good.
Is this much better? Can you hear me
Yes.
better now?
Yes.
Okay.
Sound like stacking from the lake now. That's that good.
Well, I would also say, I heard a lot of people getting hard, so to speak, about the helmets that Iowa State wore on Thursday. They were like of a cyclone, and I wasn't feeling that as much, but I was feeling Wake Forest's helmets. Those were good. I believe Colorado State wore like a rendition of the Colorado flag, like white, blue, and red, or if they didn't wear it this weekend, it's coming up. And I'm not necessarily crazy about that either. I mean, this is a team that's wearing like orange and green, and they think that's a good look for when they were, some old ag school 50 years ago. So just stick with what you do best, Rams. That's green and, gold or whatever the hell it is.
Somebody alert Iowa State that they call them tornadoes on this side of the hemisphere, if they could. If you can get that word to Ames, if you could. Penn State at Northwestern next week. I'll call an upset now. Georgia loses at Vanderbilt. Georgia, you're done. Miami, Florida State, game of note. LSU, Florida. That's going to be an eye gouger, if there ever was one. Maryland at Ohio State. Alabama at A&M. Not your 2:30 game. That's an ESPN 6 o'clock game. So, for some reason, LSU and Florida. That's your Saturday CBS game. That's pretty garbage.
I feel like Florida could score 6 points
and win that game
comfortably 6-0.
And cover the spread even.
Yeah.
Charlie,
I want to say that, like I said before, I expect weirdness in that particular time slot. We've had 2 just total duds the last 2 weeks in that slot. So yeah, we're gonna have a game decided by 2 or 3 points. Time management will be terrible. It'll come down to a couple kickers missing kicks. That's what I want. SEC on CBS, presented by Home Depot. Get fired up.
The refs will screw up, use NFL rules. Ed Orgeron will be out of challenges at the end, and he'll be like, "No, I don't need challenges." They're like, "Sorry, you're out of them, coach. You can't challenge this."
how much of that is the Vern Lundquist effect?
I mean,
it's all of it.
I think somebody tweeted the other day that on Saturday that Gary Danielson talks to Brad Nessler like he never realized that he worked with Vern Lundquist or something. It was like he doesn't appreciate that he worked with a legend for 10 years or however long it was, and it's disappointing. I mean, I like Brad Nessler. I think he's doing a fine job, but bring back Vern.
Wisconsin and Nebraska, Charlie. Any hope? Any hope?
I would have felt better if Wisconsin would have blown Northwestern out. The fact that Northwestern made it close and made it a game, while some people, they might think, oh, maybe that means Wisconsin's beatable, it makes me think it's more likely that Wisconsin's like, oh, let's not leave the door open. And I don't know. I think that it might be sort of close score-wise. I think Nebraska's defense, which surprisingly has looked a lot better when they don't play spread teams like Oregon and Arkansas State. Like, I could see them holding Wisconsin to 20 or 24, but they could lose like 24-7 in a game where it's like, this game was over mid the second quarter. They were just pretending that it was still going on.
Last game of the week, Marcus. 7 o'clock start Central Time. Number 11, Washington State at Oregon. I think the Ducks win.
Oregon did what they had to do against California on Saturday. From the little I watched about it, so that's probably a good sign. It's a good sign that Oregon seems to be playing at a level that is worthwhile of being Oregon and being funneled money by Nike. So I think I would agree with some of what you had.
Would it change your mind if you knew that Oregon's starting quarterback has a broken collarbone and probably will not play?
That increases their chances in my eyes. Increases it. I'm all in.
Now, to be fair, now this was just in like 2 tweets I saw. It's not on his throwing shoulder. I mean, I don't know. I've never had a broken collarbone. I would imagine it would still be excruciatingly painful. It'd be fun to see him be like, no, I'm going to gut this out. 1980s team sports movie style.
I think Jeremiah Masoli could be the quarterback and they'd still win. That's what I think.
Isn't he in prison?
Isn't he in prison?
Didn't he get arrested for tax evasion?
Jeremiah Masoli? Are you sure?
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that he got in trouble.
What happened to
I don't know
this?
if he's in prison or not, but
What happened to this idiot? He's apparently playing for the Hamilton. He's playing for the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the CFL.
That doesn't mean that he wasn't in jail.
What are we talking?
That probably means it's more likely he was in jail.
They banned.
Go Ticats.
They banned my guy Manziel. They don't ban this fool.
They didn't ban him. He had a statement or something this week that they were looking at playing or something.
Masoli arrested.
Didn't pay attention to it.
Real quick, we don't have to talk about this a lot, but before the season, it seemed like South Florida was the group of 5 team everyone was on to possibly go undefeated, be the team that gets the good bowl game. Same state. How about Central Florida?
Let's do it.
They're undefeated. I don't know if Memphis is great, but Memphis was undefeated and had beat UCLA, and Central Florida just kicked the snot out of them.
I would prefer that. Central Florida beat the shit out of Maryland last week, so good for them.
You got San Diego State still cooking too, right?
Yeah. They're in the mix.
Also
Was this after he graduated or when he was in college?
I thought it was after he graduated.
I can't find anything on this.
He got in trouble for something when he was in college also.
Yeah.
And that's why he left Oregon, because I think he stole a laptop or something. And then I think he got in trouble again after he left.
Not great.
If this week has taught us anything, it's that if you need a laptop or $100,000 or whatever,
just sit and wait for it.
You can find the right guys. They'll take care of it. So these college quarterbacks stealing laptops, they got to find the right guys to hook them up.
And
better boosters. Find better boosters.
And the most unsurprising story of the year, apparently college basketball players and recruits are giving them money from agents and coaches and such. What a stunner this was. Marcus Straxer, what's the fallout from this? Rick Pitino dead, and I guess we're still waiting on the others. There's 4 assistant coaches in this deal. I don't know.
This is just those 4, though. There's probably not any other coaches that are going to get in trouble
none.
for cheating.
I would say this is. I'll go like exactly the same as steroids in baseball in the 90s. You're like, what? There were steroids in baseball in the 90s? No way. I think it's the same thing.
I think the 4 coaches that...
Am I supposed to care about this? That's what I want to know.
I mean, I think it's a big scandal. I'm not convinced that anything's going to change because of it. And that's where a friend of the program, David Schottenkirk, and I disagree quite a bit. He thinks that this is going to change stuff, and I don't. So,
what's going to change?
I don't know. I mean, I understand that there's, now there's a threat that you're going to have people going to jail. The FBI's involved. The FBI doesn't F around, but I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling that there's going to be any, there's always going to be coaches, there's always going to be shoe companies, and there's always going to be money. And those 3 elements are going to find each other all the time. So, and you're going to always have desperate recruits, desperate players that are going to find themselves in this situation. So, as long as there's players to be taken advantage of, and it doesn't matter to the administrators who run college sports, because the incentive is there for them to keep it this way. As long as players aren't getting paid, I just don't see anything changing. So, I just can't. I've thought about it a little bit, even since I got in the tit for tat with Shoddy the other day, and I'm not feeling that too much is going to change. Other than some good coaches, some assistant coaches are going to lose their jobs or go to prison. We've got guys that will turn on other guys, but I'm just not feeling it right now. I don't know.
I think just because the reward outweighs the risk.
Right.
I mean, I think it's just if anyone was like, no, this can't be going on, it would just seem odd to me. Like more so with basketball than any other sport. I mean, not to say that there isn't cheating in football also, but you're not sure if a 17-year-old kid in high school is going to turn into a great NFL player. I mean, you're not with basketball either, but with a much higher degree of certainty, you can be like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure this kid's going to be a top 10 draft pick in 2 years compared to football players, and basketball players are more marketable than football players. So it's just this is the perfect storm of everything aligning of just well, yeah, of course it would be men's college basketball that would have this. It's also the sport where one player makes a much, much bigger difference than in any other sport too.
Do you think it will come out that the mid-major level is involved in this as well? Will that come out? Instead of $100,000, maybe we're giving you $25,000 at the Mo Valleys and the Max of the world.
I don't know.
Do you think that happens?
What?
Do you think that happens?
I think it happens, but I think with the frequency that they're going to be able to catch it, I'm not quite sure, because it just seems like there's not enough money for some of those schools to make it work. That's just sort of my hunch on that.
The fat man, hold on. The fat man's coming up. Let's give it a call. Let's give it, boys. This is it, boys. This is it.
Fat Bart might have done what he needed to do to get himself on the playoff
No, he's done. This is the last time he'll ever pitch in a game right here, boys.
You think so?
Oh yeah, I didn't see his last pitch. I see him walking off there. I think that might be the last time we see Mr. Bart. Barring just a goddamn food poisoning incident. So you don't, the money issue is just they don't just have the money to fling around here like the Kentuckys of the world.
That's what I think. I mean, I think if they could, they would, and that's what makes me think that it might be like a one-off thing. If you're Wichita State and granted they haven't had huge recruits, which I think is the other part of it, right? You have to be.
What are you paying for here?
These big guys. If you're looking at a school, I don't have a good example in college basketball.
Well, you look at South Carolina is involved in this deal. They had an assistant.
Right.
They're one of the teams, and all of a sudden they made the frickin' Final Four last year. So recruiting what they had with the Thornwell, whatever the hell his name was, their big player.
Yeah.
He was their big player. I don't know how big of a recruit he was, but he was kind of their main guy last year. So.
And you kind of look through history of the teams that get caught, and it's like, oh, UMass made a run to the Final Four. Nobody saw that coming, and then it turns out, oh yeah, Marcus Camby was being, given all these breaks coming up. So it just seems like that seems to happen, especially when we look back on history. Memphis in the same boat.
Breaking.
Funny that it's where Calipari ends up.
That's because he coached at Massachusetts. He coached at Memphis. He's coaching now at Kentucky. Yeah, Kentucky's doing something. What do you know right there? Drew Amini chimes in and off. Bartolo goes into the night and into a restaurant. One last jab at the 44-year-old man. In line for the
I like to think that Bartolo's leaving the field and walking directly to a bar and buying shots for 40 people. And it's just in there, cleats hat on still, and buying drinks for people.
So it's 6 and 6 1/3, 6 2/3, 1 run. 3 hits. That'll get it done, folks. That'll get yourself a win. He hugs first base coach for Detroit, Omar Vizquel, as he exits the field. Former Cleveland teammate, Omar Vizquel. The playoffs, they start on Tuesday night. Twins-Yankees with your first playoff game. It's Big Irv against Severino for the Yankees. I think the Twins win. Marcus, what say you?
I was just thinking about this before this show began.
Irv needs to do it, boys. Irv needs to fucking be sharp. That's all it is to it.
I don't think that's all it is to it.
I don't see the Twins scoring a bunch. I see if they're winning this thing, I think it's like a 2-1 deal.
I actually don't think.
Really?
I don't think the Twins can win that game. I think because this pitching, even if you get, if we're talking Irv throws a complete game, then yeah, maybe. But I don't see that happening either.
Well, what has he got? 5?
He's got 5.
He's got more than anybody, so he's more than capable of.
I know he's capable.
He's doing the deal here.
The playoff. The one game scenario, I don't think he's going to throw a complete game. I think he can pitch well. Obviously, if he throws a complete game, that's a great scenario. I think the Twins obviously win that. But we've seen it before in these one-game scenarios. Nick Blackburn throws a gem, and it doesn't matter, folks. So I think the way the Twins win this game is they've got to score. They have to have a big inning early and sort of set the pace. I think that's sort of the most likely scenario.
I would be very scared with a 4-0 lead after the second. I'd be like, God damn it. God. I don't want to lose that way again because that's how they always lose.
I understand that
up 3-1, up 3-1 in the 8th. It's I told Evan last week, a 2-run lead in the 8th inning, that's not good. That's not good.
Yeah, to me, it's got to be, they have to have a big lead and Irv's pitching well. And I don't think you're going to get both of those at the same time. That's what makes it hard for me to... I think they've got a 50-50 chance of winning this game.
I think the Yankees are minus 250 favorites. Just a huge, huge favorite in this game.
That's kind of crazy. I keep coming back to the fact that they have to get a big inning early. I don't think that's going to necessarily happen. But that, to me, is kind of the most realistic route. It's exciting. I'm probably going to write something for Tuesday's paper, sort of acknowledging that I'm a hypocrite in some ways.
How so?
I wasn't necessarily in love with the second wild card in this one game format, but when your team's in it, that makes it a lot more interesting. And you sort of get sucked in, I think, by the whole situation. So I'm certainly excited for Tuesday. I think Wednesday's game could be a lot of fun as well, with the Rockies and the D-backs. So I'm excited to see it happen. But at the same time, we were sort of talking the aforementioned Evan Hendershot, and you guys must have been talking about how in Korea they need 2 wins if you're the second wild card to advance.
What?
He said he talked to you about that.
I'll talk to him here in an hour.
Yeah.
What? Korea? What the hell is this? I have no idea what you're talking about. Not a fucking clue.
Wait. North Korea or South Korea?
North Korean baseball. No, South Korean baseball. They must have a wild card system. I could be totally butchering this too.
Okay.
But this is what he told me. That
What,
they have a
2 out of 3
second
or what?
wild card, and the number 1 team, the Yankees in this case, only have to win once to advance to the next round. But the Twins would have to win 2 games to go to the next round, which I have to say, I like that format. I realize that in this particular scenario it wouldn't be good for the Twins, but
Interesting.
I like that because that is the reward for being the number 1 wild card, whether you win that spot by.
Are they both
1
played?
game,
They're
5 games.
both games are played then at the high seed.
I believe so. I asked him if
That would make
that
sense.
would mean that second game would be in Minnesota. He said he didn't think so. By the way, Giancarlo Stanton up at the plate right now. So
Let's switch it over, folks.
Real quick on the winning twice, if you're the underdog in the playoffs, just in a quick hashtag stacking TV ratings. If you're the MLB, you'd love to get an extra playoff game. Like, they always love extra playoff games.
They do. That's why they want series to go 7 instead of 5. So that's a good incentive. But I'm freely willing to acknowledge the fact that I'd much rather see a 3-game series between the 2 wildcard teams than a 1-game setup. But time is kind of the essence. I realize that's why they do this. So.
And if anything, is fewer sports other than the NFL playoffs, or that's the only professional one. The Echo's back. Texas is back. I understand the point of like multi-game series and the further in the playoffs. I think those are important. It's fun having things like the NFL playoffs or college basketball playoffs, though, where it's like you only get 1 chance at the same time. So you can be much, much better and you might easily win a 7-game series, but if you don't win the first game, I don't know. There's an extra feeling of, especially when you're a neutral observer like myself in most games, because the Dolphins and White Sox don't ever make the playoffs.
Giancarlo Stanton, formerly Mike, grounds out to what is typically the shortstop. I don't know if the shift was on, but he's stuck on 59 home runs. Might not come to the
Could be it for him.
Yeah.
You think Twins win? I think Twins win 2-1. 2-1. B. Byron Buxton, Ron Buxton, John Buxton. He makes a great catch, and he gets the game-winning hit, whatever the hell that is.
I think the Twins win because it's not any fun to pick the Yankees. So, because I'm talking about a blowout, big inning, Twins win 7-3.
Charlie.
I said Twins are down 3-2 in the 7th. They get a run, things are looking good. Then they have a bad inning and they lose 6-2.
There's no doubt that could happen. No doubt.
Santana pitched their last week.
Also, worth noting, if you guys would have both picked the Yankees, I would have picked the Twins just to be different.
That's fine.
Santana pitched last week against the Yankees, did well. Severino pitched last week against the Yankees. 3 runs in 3 innings, did not pitch well. So
Against the Twins, you mean?
yeah, that's your matchup.
Texas is back.
Terrific. Wild card.
Marcelo Ozuna with his 37th home run. That may get Stanton one more crack here.
I think he's got 2 of them here.
2 today.
I
Yeah.
think so, yeah. Other wild card is Arizona and Colorado. We like our Rockies. I have no interest in seeing the Rockies win this game. Hope they get the fuck knocked out of them. 10-1.
Just because the Diamondbacks the kind of snake, you're basically calling for a stone cold stunner
I
early
am.
ending it.
Break the glass. Stun them. Done. World Series pick, Charlie. What say you? We got 10 teams here. Some more likely to get there than others. We got last year's both champs still in there. What do you think?
I'm going to preface this with, I think there's a good chance the Cleveland Indians make the World Series. There's a lady at work who's a Cleveland sports fan because she's from there, and she's a nice lady, and I don't have anything against her. But she talks about the Indians a lot, and I'm kind of sick of it, so I hope the Indians lose, and this might play into that a little bit. So I guess I'm going to go. I'm going to go Stackins ratings bonanza, and I'm going to go Yankees Dodgers World Series.
Yankees Dodgers. So what he's got? Marcus.
I'm on record as saying that I think I'd like to see the Dodgers in the World Series, so I'm kind of locked in there. But I want these playoffs to be weird, and to me, weird probably calls for like Houston and Arizona to play each other. So Houston and Arizona is my pick because why the hell not?
How about we see Matt Belisle and Kinsler in the 9th inning?
Yeah, I want to see that. So.
I've got Cleveland beating Arizona. That's what I have. Cleveland beating Arizona.
Let's ask Drew what he thinks. Oh, yeah, never mind.
Drew Amon, what do you think? Can anybody do an Amon? Can anybody do Amon doing somebody else? He does Hove.
Cam Newton.
Good, yep, that's him right there. He does a Cam Newton, and he does a Tim Kirchin. So there you go. Drew Amon's pick of the litter right there. Stackin, I think Stackin will have the same, or I'll have the same as him, Cleveland and Arizona, because he really likes Arizona. Why? I have no idea. But could he name, over under, Charlie, could he name 5 guys in Arizona?
Current or all time?
That's a good question. Current.
Current? I would say no. All time?
Yes.
I'm thinking me. I think I could name 5 Diamondbacks all time. It might not be pretty.
Give it a chance. Give it a chance.
Okay. Randy Johnson.
Yep.
Kurt Schilling.
There you go.
Luis Gonzalez.
3 for 3. Been around for 20 years. 2 guys.
Paul Goldschmidt.
2 guys. Maybe 1 guy.
Let's see.
There's one other guy they've got that's a well-known guy.
I'm trying to think of the guy who got the leadoff hit to beat the Yankees before Gonzalez drove him in. Was it Tony Womack?
Look at you digging deep. Yes.
And I think those might be the only 5 I could name, but I got to 5, and that's really all I care about.
The fact that you didn't say Bobby Bonilla is really more like that.
Crap. You know what? I'm disappointed in myself. I brought shame upon my family. And I'm terribly sorry that I did not think of Big Money Bonilla.
Zach Greinke also would have been acceptable. Zach Greinke would have been acceptable.
Craig Counsell or
Sure.
Chris Herman.
Any series you're looking forward to the most?
I believe that the Cubs and Nationals will play each other, correct?
Is that the one you like?
I like that in the first round. I think that, and if we get Dodgers, if we get Dodgers and Diamondbacks, that'd be good. To have Greinke go against his old team, and also would be nice to have Twins. Think. Why the hell not?
Why not? That'd be good.
I'd much rather have Twins Cleveland than Yankees Red Sox.
You can't. Well, yeah, you could have that in the ACLS.
ACLS.
So.
Lou Gehrig's disease is what they call it these days, I believe.
That's right.
Yes. President's Cup, big President's Cup weekend, as it always is here this first couple days of October. Huge President's Cup weekend. Anything else on the agenda? Did we cover it all?
But I just want to say, did you watch any of that by chance?
The President's Cup?
I'm seriously
No,
asking. Did you watch
I didn't see
it. It was terrible. The course was terrible. They put it at Liberty National. The U.S. just murdered the ever-living daylights out of them. So, just abysmal. I hope Stacken's all concerned about the ratings in golf. Let's see the ratings on that. That's going to be ugly.
Yeah, not good. Not good at all. Pretty porous if you say so. Charlie, you got anything else?
I had something like 15 minutes ago. I forgot what it was now. It was something related to college basketball recruiting and the scandal. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was just something along the lines, though, that I think boosters are a lot better at cheating now than they used to be. That it's just like, oh, wait, we can just get cash and pay guys cash, and they can't trace that now, and that screws people up because everything else is like documented places, and you can't document cash. I guess we'll just get guys cold over crisp cash, man.
We like it that way. We do.
I don't understand why that's not. Isn't a bag of money harder to trace than, if I go to the bank and I withdraw $50,000 in cash, they don't know what I'm doing with it. I mean, it just seems kind of obvious, right?
I think there's ways you can trace it, especially if you're like the FBI. But other than this specific scenario where the FBI is involved right now, and most of the time they're like, no, we don't care. Because
there's one more thing.
It turns out it's not against the law to give people money in most scenarios.
They had like text messages saying, hey, we're going to beat up this, we're going to do this then, and you got the call records. That makes it a little bit more difficult when they're able to, make the connections. That's rough.
Need those burner phones also.
That's right.
I guess I was not giving a shit either way whether they win or lose. I was surprised at people's reaction that SDSU lost, or maybe how they lost.
The reaction, actually, I didn't.
They lost to Youngstown. I didn't read recaps or anything, but Youngstown was the national runner-up last year. They're a good team. It doesn't seem to come up very often. They're ranked 5th in the country, and they made the national championship game. Don't believe I heard that at all in the lead-up, and I don't know if I heard any of it post-haste yesterday. So, I mean, they played fucking Youngstown State. This isn't goddamn Western Illinois here.
Yeah, the one thing that jumps out at me is that obviously I'd love to deny it, but USD is pretty good, and they're going to be difficult the rest of the season for teams to deal with. Youngstown just sort of bludgeoned SDSU for. I mean, they had the ball for like almost 45 minutes in the game, so that makes it difficult. And SDSU they didn't play very well. It did kind of put into focus for me that SDSU. I don't know if people really thought they were going to be national title contenders, but it seems clear now they're not going to win it unless they get significantly better on defense.
So you just win your home games and you'll be good. Win your home games. Get your home field in the playoffs. That's what you got to get.
I think they'll still be a top 8 seed. I think they'll probably go 9-2 in the regular season, but that was sort of a test. The fact they were coming off a bye last week and they just looked like they slept through the whole thing. So that wasn't a great sign. They gotta be better.
One final point. should talk about it. NBA season, preseason is underway. They have three preseason games, so that's interesting. Timberwolves played last night. They beat the Lakers. Wolves. Russell Westbrook.
This is the first show since Carmelo's been traded.
That's right. Your thoughts on that, Charlie? And Russell Westbrook signed a 5-year, $200+ million deal, and it's a lot of money for him.
I liked it. I think my favorite thing I saw about the period. I don't remember where I saw this or who it was, but it was like really like this from Oklahoma City. Great move. They're still probably like the 4th best team in the West, though, which shows just how good and how tough it is to win in the Western Conference.
Do you have Nathan Stacken? Can I interest you in a Warren Moon jersey?
You can.
You good?
You can. You can't even hear me. Okay.
I can hear you.
We can't hear you.
We can hear.
You can. Well, that's good because it's not
Fuck it, we'll do it live. We are live. All right, we're doing it live.
Quit the banging. Quit the banging out there.
Who's banging?
Who's doing the banging?
What's that
Why
from?
do you see Phil?
No, that one? Oh, yeah, there you go. Who? I'll go out there myself. Who? Hammering. Who is doing the hammering?
The hammering. Yes.
The hammering. Who the fuck is hammering? Do you think, Mr. Stacken, as we were goddamn near pretty much done here, goddamn near done.
We were ready.
What does this do for Paul George's chances of staying with the Oklahoma City coming up next year? That Russ Westbrook apparently going to stay at Oklahoma City and rot away for the next decade.
I was just going to say, were we talking about this before Westbrook's extension or after Carmelo had signed with them? Or got traded to him, excuse me. I think now that Westbrook has re-signed with them, I certainly think that George is going to consider some more options here. But, I mean, the beauty of this is, I guess, from George's standpoint, is he can see how this is a one-year trial for him. If this goes really well, if he thinks that this is a team that can compete year in and year out, maybe he says, screw it, LA, I'm going to stay in OKC. And if it doesn't go great, then he's going to go back, or he's gonna go to LA. So I think right now,
see how they do this year.
Oklahoma City has positioned themselves in a way such as that they will definitely make George think about it. But if the ball, if you don't have enough shots for him, he might leave. And that's just that.
Marcus.
Yes, please talk to me.
Chances, likely or unlikely, that Kevin Durant goes back to Oklahoma City.
Are we talking like after this season?
Yeah.
There's a chance, sure. I don't know how much. It's got to be fairly low. He's already on the best team. And I don't know exactly what kind of cap hell the Warriors are in. They seem to have managed the salary cap pretty well.
Well, Jordan.
Curry's getting his money now, so I think there's a higher than 1% chance, but I wouldn't necessarily go too high with it.
Charlie, would you like to see that?
In the past, yes, and along those lines, I've mentioned in the past that I like the idea of like LeBron just moving all up and down the Eastern Conference, going to different teams. I like the idea of Kevin Durant being the West version of LeBron James. And it's just like, all right, we did it. Going to a new team now to start over. And then them both just like meeting in the finals every year for like the next 5 years.
With
always
different
with a different team.
Denver Nuggets, it's your turn to have Durant for a year. Let's see it.
Denver Nuggets, Milwaukee Bucks. Kevin Durant beat LeBron James, part 5.
Are we going to see Glenn Perkins one more time here, maybe? Is this what we're looking at, or did I...
Texas is back, by the way.
Good. How was it?
Oh, hey, Pooch.
Hold on. Glenn Perkins, or is that another left-handed pitcher?
That was somebody with a red glove. I don't think Perkins has a red glove.
Any thoughts on old Glenn Perkins? Seems like he's about had it. Do you expect him to give it a try, or to just say, this was my try, and I can't do this no more?
I bet he at least shows up to spring training, right? I mean, I realize he probably at this point doesn't think he can make it, but he was trying to get back for this year. So maybe if he gives himself
5
months to get ready for next year, that'd be fine. If he is done, I will give him credit. Apparently, recently celebrated 10 years in the majors. That's a great accomplishment. From Minnesota, played for Minnesota, the only team he was on. That's a great accomplishment. Fashioned himself into a very good reliever. So
probably like the 4th best closer they've ever had, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he was, for the time he was at the top, that was great. And I would say he had a great moment in Twins history. He got the save in the All-Star game, so that's nice for him. And at the end of the day, the Twins can afford to move on without him, but I guess you have to give him some credit for trying to make it back.
Bring back everyday Eddie.
He's there. Put him in. Put him in.
Hey, isn't LaTroy Hawkins still pitching?
No, he's not.
Well, this was his first year not pitching, so
Yeah.
I mean, he's been around, did a few games in the booth. Mr. Stacken, how do you? Huh?
Can I interrupt and go back to the Carmelo Anthony thing for one quick moment?
Sure.
I love
Is it raining? It's raining
Carmelo
here.
Anthony, he hinted at the fact that
Call this game.
he was
Call.
call it, end the game right now.
Get
He
that.
hinted at the fact that he was very close, him and Paul George both going to Cleveland, I think on draft night.
Yeah.
And that story was lost so quickly, nobody cared. And I just thought that was kind of hilarious. That was like that would have been another mega NBA move that should have had people talking this last week. Instead we had, Trump and whatever. Bullshit.
Well, like Paul George was rumored, and then if Carmelo was going to go anywhere, I figured it would be Cleveland. But both during the same day.
I guess so.
What the hell would they give up? Jesus Christ!
I don't know.
Not that Oklahoma City gave up much to begin with, but Cleveland really doesn't have anything to give up right there. We could play a pretty good game maybe in a week or two when the NBA season gets started. I'll just say a guy, and you tell me if he's even playing basketball, and if so, what team is he on? How about that?
Who he play for?
Who he play for? Because there was one guy that I saw, like, oh, this guy plays for this team now, huh? That's interesting.
I like it. I look forward to this game
I'll be-
throughout the entire NBA season.
I think this is my first or second time watching Gabriel Moya pitch.
What do you think?
Boy, do I hate it.
You hate
Boy,
him.
do I
Why?
hate it.
Why?
This wind up, whatever he's doing out of the stretch, holy shit, is that annoying. That is some annoying
Effective.
stuff. He comes set like 3 times.
It's effective. It's effective, boy. See what he can do. This is the guy they got for Aaron Hicks because they traded Murphy. Yeah. So this is what we got for Aaron Hicks. So let's make that count.
Nice job, guys.
Good. I've got the MLB TV. Really enjoy that. I'm always on the fence about the NBA package. And the last couple of years I've thought about it. And I've ultimately decided no. And ultimately I've decided that was a good decision because once the first quarter of the first game was played, I'm like, I don't give a shit at all about any of this. It's probably a good decision. And I would watch, Golden State. That'd be fun, and Oklahoma City. And besides that, I mean, there's not a whole Boston. See what Boston does.
I don't think you or I get NBA TV, but I've been told that if you get NBA TV and you have ESPN and TNT, you get like 60 of the Golden State games this year. Just some ridiculous number. I don't know how many it is, but it's just an insane number of games that they're going to be covered. So, and I was having this conversation with my colleague and noted fellow Chicago Bulls fan, Ryan Deal, the other night.
The real deal.
And he said that, he's thought about it in the past, but obviously his Bulls are going to be pretty terrible, and so he doesn't have any interest in it either. So, if you're just like a total basketball wonk, and you can stand watching all these teams, go for it. But I can't focus.
I think the whole thing's $200. So if you could get like 5 or 6 folks, if there's any limits on this, $30. That would be. I think that you could get your money's $30 worth. But you'd have to find those 4 or 5 people.
And as you well know, I have 2 TVs.
Is that right?
I've noted that a couple times.
You have 2 TVs. Okay.
If you had 4 or 5 TVs and you could watch 4 or 5 games at once, that would help too. I don't think.
Yeah.
Like you said though, you gotta be able to split it. So.
You do. Nathan Stacken, what do you make of this Twins-Yankees game on Tuesday?
Well, I think
if the Twins win, how do they do it? How do you see it happening?
Well, I'd like to hope that their bats would wake up against the Yankees, unlike they did in the Bronx a couple weeks ago. I think we can expect Santana to pitch really well, and watch. Now that I said that, he won't. But I think if he
you expect Trump to win a second term, don't you?
You want to say yes, because then it won't happen.
Well, I'd love to. Yes. Anyway, I think
I'm in favor of Trump. Wow, Stacken. I never thought you'd do that.
Why do you disrespect our president so much? God damn it! God, respect the office. What has he done to disrespect the office? Either way, yeah, Herb Santana doing some good things.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, can we get back to the topic at hand, please?
Yes.
I think if Santana can go 7 innings and give up
Less
2 or
than
3
8 runs,
then I think the Twins have about a 75% chance to beat the Yankees. I don't trust the Yankees starting pitching a whole lot. Of course, you get to their bullpen, that's great. And maybe all they're going to ask is for who's throwing
Severino.
for? Is it,
Severino.
So
Luis Severino. He's the best pitcher. Which
Dakin will be watching his 4th baseball game of the season on Tuesday, so you'll have to excuse him if he doesn't know who Luis Severino is.
This guy, I remember. Wasn't this the guy that pitched on Wednesday and went only like 3 innings and got 3 runs off?
Yeah.
Okay,
so good.
I do know what I'm
There we
talking
go.
about.
There we go.
That was one of the 3 games he watched, obviously.
Good.
That's very true. So, I mean, if they're expecting him to go 5 innings and you turn it over to the bullpen, I think that's
It's good for them.
I think that's how the Yankees are going to try and go at it here. So hopefully the Twins can get some runs, put them on the board early, and see what happens from there. So I think Santana has shown that he's pitched very well this year. And if you're going to be able to beat the Yankees in a 1-game series, is much easier to do than 5. I don't even guess you can't even call it a series. It's a win and you're
1-game
moving
playoff.
on. Yeah, it's an elimination game, essentially. So I do give the Twins a fairly decent shot to go into New York and win. But having said that, they've lost 12 straight playoff games. The Yankees are their arch nemesis in the playoffs. So don't have a great deal of faith that it's going to happen. But if Santana can go 6 or 7 strong, I do like the Twins' chances a lot more.
Your prediction?
I will say the Yankees win 6-3.
6-3.
Wow, that was eerily similar to mine.
Charlie liked them 6-2. I like Twins 2-1. Marcus.
I hope you're right. I hope that I just jinxed the Yankees like I jinxed Kai Forbath today.
That's right. Marcus liked the Twins like 6-7.
7-3 or 4.
7-3. So there you go.
And Stackton and I have basically the exact same game plan for the Twins to win. So that's all that matters. Just get some runs early. If this is, so to speak, a bullpen game, the Twins have no chance.
Well, you got Barrios. You got Barrios out there. You can see what he can do.
I'm saying if it gets to
the
Yankees are throwing 6 guys and the Twins are throwing 6 guys, that's not good.
You need Hildenberger to be on, and you need him to throw 2.
Yeah.
Belial's been good. He's not somebody I would want out there in the 9th, but he's been good. And Taylor Rogers, he's all right. So
Rogers, Hildenberger,
Barrios.
that's it. Belial, Barrios. After that, not good.
Duffy's a
Not
guy.
good.
Duffy's a guy.
Duffy in long inning situation, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Stacking your World Series pick.
The Dodgers are starting to play really well right now. I think the key in the NL is going to be Bryce Harper's knee. But I guess Scherzer, what happened to him the other day?
He was hamstrung by his hamstring.
Okay, well that's not good either for the Nationals. So until the Nationals can actually win a series, I won't pick them.
Okay.
They've burned me before. If the Diamondbacks win against the Rockies, do they take on the Dodgers? Or
Yes.
is it okay? I'm gonna go out on a limb here, big limb, but I say the Diamondbacks
Oh boy.
take down the Dodgers. I like it. Indians, Diamondbacks World Series. I like the Indians to win it all.
That's what Prince said you would pick. So
Let's play the Stackett Diamondbacks game.
yes, let's play that game.
Name 5 Diamondbacks currently on the rooster. I gave the same question to Charlie, but instead of on the roster, just ever, and he did get it. The last.
Okay, I
You
can
get the harder question.
You get the harder question though.
I think this is going to be okay. Paul Goldschmidt Luis Gonzalez.
No. Right now.
Right now.
No, you said all time.
That was
So
Charlie.
I think I've seen 4 Diamondbacks games in my whole life.
Texas is back.
4 of them were in 2001. So, Paul Goldschmidt, I'll give you 1. I don't think we have audio for anything now. My heavens.
They got a Martinez recently.
First one would be nice.
Yeah, I was going to say Edgar, but I know that's not it.
No.
Fuck. This is
JD Martinez hit like 50 home runs. They got him from Detroit.
2.
I'll allow it.
Okay. Who's that pitcher that they got from? Zach Greinke.
Greinke, he will pitch in the playoff game.
Yep.
2 to go. It's
They got from the Braves.
It's going to be a
couple
struggle.
years ago.
It's going to be a struggle.
Oh God. Well, can I say that Tony La Russa is their president of baseball operations?
Has he played in the game yet this year?
He is not. No.
I will not allow that.
He's what, 70?
I feel like we can give Stackett half credit on that, but half credit doesn't help you a whole lot on
It'll be a push. It'll be a push.
You know what? I am.
Name. Okay, here we go. This ain't gonna happen. If you can name one of their 2 TV announcers, I'll give you the win.
Oh, Steve Berthiaume.
Nathan Stack, and look at that, boys. Look at that.
They got
Is currently their color analyst.
And he does a double.
So
Yes, he is.
there we go.
Stackett, do you remember who scored their game-winning run in the World Series against the Yankees?
Was that Luis Gonzalez, I believe?
He got the hit.
Oh, who scored? He got the game-winning hit. I don't know who was on third.
Here's your hint. Batting stance.
And Charlie guessed this guy. So, yeah, I mean, you got to get this Stackett.
Batting stance. That does.
He's the current manager of the Brewers.
Oh, Craig Counsell.
There we go.
Yes.
Howard.
Thank you.
Never mind, I didn't get that one. That's Tony Womack that scored the game-winning run.
You let us all down, Stack. You want to know why?
Because I couldn't name 5 current Diamondbacks.
No,
yet
no.
So.
This was a chance for a good laugh. You could have said Bobby Bonilla.
even when I succeed, I fail.
Yeah, that's right.
There we go. Anything else, Mr. Stacken, as we wrap up? The 231st edition.
Shitty week for my teams.
The Wild. What did the Wild do this week?
Well, they're fucking preseason. Let's not be. Sweet, they beat the Stars 5-1.
See, look at that revenge for moving 20 years ago. Fuck them.
Galvin is done for the year, so that
Izzy, what did he do? Tore
his ACL. So
I'm sure it happened on a really hard hit too. I'm sure somebody really popped him up. I'm sure it wasn't a non-contact injury because that never happens.
The Vikings lost this game today by their own stupid, like a wildcat. Stop with the wildcat. That's terrible. But overall, yeah, I think that's just about it.
I know Krenz likes the stat of Matthew Stafford.
Oh, it's so good. It's so fucking good.
Does this mean that the Vikings will not have a winning record this year then?
8-8, tops 8-8. He's already beaten Arizona. Don't see Arizona getting 9 wins. They lost to Atlanta. I do see Atlanta winning more than 8 games. And they beat the Giants. Do not see the G-Men winning more than 9 or more than 8 games. So, I think
Arizona is currently in an underground rock fight with the 49ers.
So this appears to hold true. I mean, if Detroit beats you, you're not winning more than 8. If you beat them, you probably are. So, tried and true, good old Matt Stafford, the barometer for the NFL for the last 8 years.
Yeah,
so.
I was just going to say, we're looking at this the wrong way. The Lions with Stafford are like the best measuring bar in all the NFL. Like, if you beat them, you're probably going to the playoffs. If you're not beating them, then start scouting those college players.
Charlie, will he ever win a playoff game?
Yes, this year. And then he will pull a Dan Marino in his last year, even though this won't be Stafford's last year.
He'll win one.
Struggle to a win over a bad team then lose by 50 the next week.
Assuming they don't win the division, they would have to go on the road and beat a team. I do not see Detroit going on the road and beating anybody.
Well, they were gifted a few turnovers today. I mean, they were not the better team today. Plus, the officiating in this game was absolutely awful. I'm pretty sure there were at least 17 guys that got mugged and robbed in this one. It was not good.
You need the police in that scenario, not the refs.
You do, I know, but I mean, the refs are letting this get away from them. Aren't the refs the police in this situation?
The police are busy investigating Rick Pitino and all those guys.
That's so true.
They need to be. They really need to be taking a knee during the national anthem to protest referee brutality. I think.
I don't see anybody complaining about when they take the knee during the game with like 2 minutes left. What is this?
You don't hear that, do you?
Hypocrisy at its finest. Hypocrisy at its finest, I would say.
If we're being completely honest, I mean, I feel like if you're kneeling and Stacken's talking about getting mugged and having your wallet stolen, if your butt is closer to the ground, it's probably harder to have things stolen from your back pocket. Maybe.
Keep everything in the front pockets. Front pockets. For Jim Stacken, for John Traxler, for George Hildebrand. Good win for
and Francis Trubisky.
It was a good win for the Trojans at LSU, and I look very much forward to Trubisky killing the Vikings with a 10-3 victory next Monday night. Going to be fun. Going to be great. Let's not watch that game, shall we? So, we'll be back next week for another edition of the Sports Lounge. There we go.